We'll call the tonight's December 9, 2024 Academic Achievement Governance meeting to order. I'm going to go ahead and just hand it over to Dr. Miller and his team. Okay. And if you can start us into the Academic Achievement and Growth Report.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Brsalis. Exciting night for us to get to present our academic achievement and growth. We've talked about this with our board and community for some time. And you can see, with us tonight, we have a lot of our administrators, support staff, our academic leadership council members, department chairs, grade level chairs, and some of our teachers are here as well to support the work that has been accomplished over this time. If you look back on our website, you'll see all the history of academic achievement and growth reports. We've been doing this now since 2013. 2013 is when Dr. Miller started. And he brought this concept of sharing with the board and community how our students are growing and achieving year after year. And you can see where we have been with how we've presented the information year after year. And we listen to feedback from our board and community of like, what do you want to see and how do you want this to be presented? So we have shifted over time. The report and the presentation that we're doing tonight are very similar to where we were back in 2013. So it's like data heavy, where the last couple of years we've been focused a little bit more on the action. What does it look like after you get the results in? What are the things that are happening in the schools day in and day out to prepare the students? So as an analogy to it's the Super Bowl for us, these assessments, they are the end of year tests that the kids take. You're going to hear about AP exam, ACT, SAT, PSSA, Keystone. Those are all end of course experiences. And just like, a team preparing for the Super Bowl, there's a ton of games that happen over the course of the season. All those games are our tests and quizzes and all the different type of assessments that the teachers do with kids. Like a good coach, a game happens, they look at the film, they see what worked and didn't, and they make adjustments. And that's what our staff does over the course of the year to prepare our students for this Super Bowl of assessments. Once that happens, it's not like, we're done, we won or we lost, it's now what? So we do give a little bit of time at the end of the year, but then right in the heart of the summer, we're starting to get these assessment results back, and immediately everybody's grabbing and they're interested to see how the students performed, and then we start making adjustments from there. So we really want this to be as much of a discussion. I know it's kind of a strange setting with how we have it, but ask questions as we're going. We're going to pause periodically throughout to give our board first opportunity to pose any questions or make any comments. We really want to have a dialogue as much as we can. You'll see from time to time somebody's just going to grab a mic and share some things to give you some ideas of what's happening after we see some of these results. Okay, so that's our game plan. And here's an overview of the agenda. Dr. Miller's going to kick it off here in a moment. Where'd he go?
I'm right here.
Oh, okay, hold on. To the learning systems and the target performance goals. So he'll talk a bit about that, and then we're going to kick right into those summative results. So you get a chance. We kept it at very high level. If you want to get down and dirty into the data, there's a report that goes along with that. Tonight at the board level, we're going to keep it at a very high level, but we're prepared to answer specific questions as well. We'll go through achievement and growth. We want to talk about the portrait of a graduate. We see that image that's always behind us at our board meetings. That's a huge concept for us here at Pine-Richland about our students being ready for life after high school. Well-rounded individuals ready to pursue their path. That's a huge thing for us. And we're going to talk about some data that we use to show what does that look like in terms of findings for our kids. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Miller, and I think Dr. J is going to take it from there.
Okay, good evening. I did this about 12 years ago as well, and so I wanted to be able to see you a bit more directly to begin tonight's meeting, and from my perspective to frame the topic for both the meeting and for the minutes. Given the amount of data and information in the report, I prepared some brief comments. The first is that tonight is a good news evening. It's good news that we have this meeting where we are specifically focused and dedicated to the topic. The results are also good news worth celebration. Some of the results that we're going to share tonight are the very top in Pennsylvania. For people who believe in continuous improvement, and we are those people, there are always opportunities for improvement. Those areas of focus have been specifically noted in the report in red to make it very clear they're the areas of focus. However, perspective and context matter, and the big picture is this is a doubly good news night. The AAGR report has standardized test results and analyses. These lagging measures, as Dr. Pasquinelli said, happen once every year for some of our students, but the work is every day. Our staff and our systems are how we work with students. We have many of the representatives here that you're going to hear from. The performance targets and comparisons are good for a quick check of context. But ultimately, the results from these assessments guide back to our staff in the daily work that we do. To explicitly connect some dots, our district, like any organization, is a system. Next Monday, we'll talk about budget and finance. Our staff and the delivery of our educational programming is more than 2/3, easily more than 2/3 of our budget. It's the master schedule, how it's designed and refined by administrators. It's how our staff delivers general education to all students. It is how we take our approach to tiered interventions for students who need additional supports or enrichment. It's the continuum of services for students so that every student's needs can be met. Paraprofessionals and the support provided to both students and teachers. School counselors and the support they have with parents and helping students access learning, which is our mission. It's the relationships formed inside the classroom and outside of the classroom that drive performance. There are many students who get out of bed because they are excited to participate in a sport or in an activity. Those sports and activities motivate students to perform academically. Sometimes it's a coach or it's a sponsor or it's a teacher, not even the content, but the person that motivates our students to perform academically. So tonight we celebrate the results. We're looking at areas of continuous improvement. As Dr. Pasquinelli said, the engagement with staff is constant. The collaboration and teamwork is constant. To look at the areas of strength, to look at the opportunities for improvement, and then to bring that into the classroom for students. Our staff has the knowledge, the skill, the pride, and the ownership in what you're about to see. They're motivated and hungry for results, but to use that information to help students learn and be successful. We are very fortunate to live in a community where the community and our parents value education. And we know it takes every person to meet the needs of every student. So thank you, Dr. Justice. I'll give a couple more on this.
That's fine.
Yeah. So what we talk about, and our board has seen this, I won't spend too much time, but on the left, we see curriculum instruction assessment. So when we say we fall back on our systems, this is what makes for an educational system. Are we aligned horizontally across the district in third grade ELA? Does that get built on a foundation of second grade alignment in terms of the curriculum? Again, teachers have to make individual decisions in their classroom, but if we don't have that horizontal alignment, it becomes very difficult to move vertically. So alignment, time, and feedback, we know have been those areas of focus this year. But when we think about 4,551 students, very different students at times with very different needs, that's where that image on the right comes into play. So in the middle, we see our MTSS system. You have seen this before. Most students are having their needs met within the general education classroom. But some students need more and different. How do you know who those students are, what they need, and how do you give it to them in a way that's going to lead to better results? So we see that in the MTSS system. And again, continuum of supports, that is the concept of least restrictive environment to, in some cases, we have students who are educated in their home. They're our students. They're in the report that you have in front of you, but they're literally educated in their home because of a specific need or medical issue. Next slide. For the PSSA and the Keystone, it's important to have some sort of context or benchmark. So the board has seen this on numerous occasions. That is a high bar to demonstrate advanced proficient achievement levels in the top 10% of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. That is a stretch bar. We also, with those two assessments, are able to look at our growth. And so the Pennsylvania Value-Added Assessment System does a set of analyses to look at whether students are holding their relative position against other cohorts of students in that particular grade level and content area. And so you're able to see whether they meet the growth standard, which is in the middle, exceeded to the right. So our target, our goal, our ability to look at our results, not fixate on them, not spend 50 hours looking at this type of screen, but quickly see how are we performing in achievement and growth on the PSSA and Keystone, helpful. But what's necessary is to go right back into the classroom and into the systems we have to make the differences, data for action for the kids. Okay.
Okay, thank you so much. So on our next slide, we're just going to show you the types of summative year-end assessment standardized tests that we have captured. So they're going to be within this presentation as high-level summary results, but they're also completely outlined within the report. So all of the information that you could want is captured there, as well as the findings. So the data analysis that we've compiled, as well as the next steps. And the folks that are all sitting in this room and those who are outside of this room have helped to work on that process together. But you can see that although the PSSA, for instance, begins in grade 3, kindergarten, first and second have just as much of a stake in building the foundation for all of the skills that are eventually assessed in 3rd grade. So we see this as a system in that manner, that it takes each layer to be put down, checked for mastery. Those interventions are happening where need be so that students are able to continue to meet those proficiency standards that we have in place for each of the grade spans. One caveat here that we'll address later on as well, the science PSSA was captured in grade 4 within this report. That will be the last time that occurs. It is shifting to a 5th grade assessment with the new STEEL standards. And the format of that test, as well as the interactive test questions of the other PSSA items and Keystone, that will be shifting in the coming year as well. So, well, this year when we test in the spring. So you'll be able to see that in the coming year. Yeah. Any questions on the assessment types or anything?
Anything from the intro? Or? Okay.
All right, so we're going to dive into a high-level summary. And the way that we've broken this out, we're going to start with our two top decile and growth targets that we're trying to meet each year. So you can kind of stand back and look at this as Dr. Miller was explaining. You can really see both the achievement and the growth at a glance for each of our grade levels. And we are extremely proud of the work that our teams have done. So the reason we go with the top decile is it is that stretch goal. And we want to be able to perform within that 10% of the state. In the only case where we have not had that happen, it's still within the top 12%. So it's fantastic results. We are still committed to trying to make sure that we are growing everyone for that 1 year's growth. And there are many, many reports underneath just this surface. This is like the highest level of that. We can dig into quintiles. So if you take all of your achievement across all groups of students and divide it into the groups of 5, the lowest to highest achieving, we will see trends within Pine-Richland specifically where students are coming prepared, achieving very highly, but they're not always growing, especially in those top performing groups. So we have some really great examples of where that is happening, and we have the quintile. If you want to go into it, they're located in the appendix of the report itself. So for instance, like our Keystone for literature, amazing. So the kids are growing in all quintiles. They have the top score in Pennsylvania, period, achievement-wise. So there is a lot, seriously a lot to be thankful for and to celebrate there.
If you go back,
yeah.
I want to, at times, give you some insight into the report, too. Am I on? Testing 1. Can you, am I on? Yeah. Okay. I'm used to being in the other rooms where we echo. But anyway, couple of insights into you'll see this in the report, some of the findings that we have. So I look at 7th and 8th grade math, and we see those numbers, and we don't get excited about numbers in the 50s. We want numbers in the 80s and 90s. Of course, everybody does. But when you put that in the perspective of look across, that's why the state numbers matter too, because they show you which tests are more challenging across the state. In 8th grade, for example, the average score is at 28% across the state, compared to maybe in the 50s for grade 3. So they are different assessments. We have to keep those things in mind when we talk about this. But an example of finding an opportunity, most of our students at Pine-Richland take algebra in 8th grade. So that means for those students, they're taking the algebra Keystone at the end of that year, and they're taking the 8th grade PSSA. So 2 summative Super Bowl assessments that they're taking at the end of the year. We are laser focused, obviously it's an algebra course, on algebra content and algebra Keystone, Module 1 and Module 2. What we need to do a better job is circling back to some of that PSSA math type reminders, because these are high-performing kids that should be scoring higher than that, and we believe that some of that integration as a spiral into the curriculum will help. So those are things that we want to do and modify. Algebra, for an example, the numbers that you see there, you see that we're in the top decile. What we're reporting there is by the end of 11th grade. So this is how the state reports Keystone results. So what percentage of students by the end of 11th grade scored proficient or advanced on any of the Keystone exams? And again, 78.6% is not where we want to be for our students. Again, the reality, most of our students take algebra in 8th grade. Most of our students in 8th grade are proficient or advanced. That's 80-some%. Where our kids struggle is those that aren't ready for algebra yet by 8th grade. So now they're in the high school taking algebra for the first time. So we're seeing their success rate in terms of achievement lower. They're struggling math students, that's the reality. And then if they don't score at the proficient level, they have retest opportunities to take it, but the reality of a student's life is they leave algebra and they go to geometry. From geometry, they go to algebra 2. So we're trying to figure out how do we continue to support these kids that haven't reached proficiency yet in a course that's not an algebra course, and that's working with our math department and trying to figure that out, because the next best chance for our kids is that winter assessment that comes right after the spring assessment at the end of their course. There is another assessment in between that we really historically haven't paid a lot of attention to, and that's a summer assessment. But you'll see in our findings that we're thinking about perhaps if we offer some type of support remediation right after these kids finish their algebra course, we can perhaps get them ready for that summer retake as opposed to waiting to the winter, which is the first time that they're doing it now. So again, this is a little bit of the details that you'll see within the report that we'll share from time to time.
And as Dr. P mentioned, that the tests are actually different and not necessarily comparable from grade level to grade level. Even from year to year within the same grade level, they're slightly different. So hopefully you saw within the findings section that the number of questions allotted per eligible content can change pretty greatly, you know, from 2 points to 12 points. You really have to look at the raw data, and by doing the report the way we did this year, we're able to let anybody, community, teachers, it's very functional, this report, in terms of all stakeholder groups. You can click in and see that data, and you can see the change over time because we took the time to actually put all of it on one spreadsheet. So what we get from the state is per year. And we don't necessarily have the ability to see all of that unless we compile it separately, which we do, and now that is visible for everyone to be able to understand and see.
So I'd like, this slide here, I'd like to just talk a little bit about it because of the middle school. When I look at this, I look at 7th and 8th grade, and we have a lot of things to be proud of with ELA, science, and Keystone scores. And our teachers and our students are committed to working hard to improve these scores, but what jumps off the table here for me is our 7th grade scores in math. And so we recognize we have an area of need and growth, and I just wanted to talk to you about that a little bit, is that this year we didn't wait for the Super Bowl test to happen. We give STAR benchmark assessments, and we realized the same thing that we see here, that in proportions and ratios were lower scores for us. And so through our action plan, we identified in September that we needed to make some improvements in those two areas. And so we did some pre-testing. Our scores came back on the pre-test around 37%. And then after teaching our units on those two areas, it jumped to 96%. So we were excited about that improvement. Wow. But we have a second star assessments we started last week, and so after the holidays here, we will get to see if the work that we did in that short window, that large gain, if we'll see the gain happen on the second star assessment, because the first star assessment for ratios from proportion, we had 18% of our kids master the material. So we're anticipating seeing a large jump. If we do not, we will do some reteaching that would happen to increase those skills. I do want you to know that even though you see other places that are green, we are goal setting in all of our areas, because those are also important for us to grow our students as well. And so we have action plans for each one of the, I think, 7 areas that we're tested in, and we have goals for every single one of them, not just the red areas.
Yes, I have a question, but a point, but there's a lot of green on the slide, so congratulations on that. That's really, really good to see. And I know you've addressed some of the red. Good on you for doing that. I know we'll get into more detail on that, but to see the green, fantastic. So just for clarity, I want to make sure I understand each of the columns on the left side. So the 2024 PRSD, the numbers are the number of students proficient and
Advanced combined.
advanced.
Yes.
Okay, combined. Okay, good. And then I understand top decile, not a problem. The growth target, again, just, from a layman's term for me, walk me through how do you achieve a growth target? How is that? What's the definition of that?
It's state
Again.
provided, so start with that. There's the Pennsylvania Value-Added Assessment System. So they have a formula that essentially says, how are your students achieving? How have other students similar to them achieved over time? And are our students from year to year maintaining their relative position
Yeah.
when compared to everyone else in the state of Pennsylvania?
Okay,
So
good.
are we growing at a rate that follows the trajectory and projections we have for each
Gotcha.
of those? Yeah.
Okay, that's what I was hoping to say. I make sure I understand this. So you're basically taking like 5th grade, and when you got a growth target, you met the growth target, you're comparing to where they were in 4th grade then as they go into 5th.
You're
maintaining.
comparing, so in this regard, you might have 350 kids in 4th grade.
Yeah.
In 4th grade, their math performance, as a whole 350 kids sort of lumped into a statistical model,
Right.
gets put on a scale, and just like every other 4th grade across the Commonwealth of PA. When that same cohort moves to 5th grade on the 5th grade test, that same analysis occurs. Some students are growing, some are not growing. There's lots of movement within
Yeah.
the cohort, but ultimately, when that gets pushed all together, it's where does that same group of kids now compare to all the 5th grades? So it's
Okay.
not based on, it is to a degree based on 4th grade, but lots of things are happening within our district and other districts to allow the model to tell us whether they're holding their relative position, exceeding it, or not.
Okay.
And
Very
an
good.
interesting
Thank
thing,
you.
the science scores in 4th grade, that's the first time they take a science assessment, but they're actually using math and ELA data to project that.
Yeah.
to predict.
When it comes to science, from everything that I've read in the report and stuff, you're knocking it out of the park, so, good for that. Okay. Thank
I'll
you.
just add one thing. So 7th grade, again, the red draws, this is a local red. You won't see red like this in other school districts' academic achievement and growth presentations if they do one, because that's our own internal target. That's a reflection of what we set. So that's important to remember. That is us setting a high bar for achievement and growth. But if you look at last year's report, so if you go into board docs and you look at last year, 7th grade was green in both top decile and in growth. Same teachers, same curriculum, correct? Same approach. So it's not as if something different is occurring. So every year we're refining, getting a little bit better. But even with this, if you were to compare this to last year's snapshot, similar top decile performance, but even more growth reflected here than we saw in last year's performance. So again, that's why I said when I was up there, we don't want to fixate too much on this, but it does give us a quick glance against a local target, and then we move into what's more important.
Yeah.
I have a quick question. So for the Keystone exams, when you talk about possibly doing like a summer, testing, if you want to call it that, Do we get the test results back that quickly from the Keystones, like they typically take them in like April or May? So do we have that data so we could, have kids retake in the summer if we were going to provide like summer? Is that, that works out timeline-wise?
We do. I mean, typically when we're waiting, we have to wait for this because.
For the whole state and get all the comparisons?
And we want to get those comparators as well. But the
Okay.
results come back, and they're coming back more and more quickly because things are online, so that's speeding everything up.
Okay. Do we have like comparator school districts like that we could benchmark that are doing summer assessments and seeing success? Like, have we looked into
A
that?
while
or-
ago, we did them. So it just, I think they went away for a bit because we had smaller groups of students, and we also could assess in the winter. So we have the option to do summer, winter, and spring. But I think it's simple for us to do. I'm the district assessment coordinator. I work with, we both have Tracy and Jake at the high school, are super helpful that way. Coordinating the list of the students who need to test and just getting the information out to families. I think hopefully we would have interested staff to proctor. That would be the one other question.
Yeah. Okay.
And yeah, we have connected with some other high schools to see what they're doing in terms of taking advantage of that time. You cannot require students to, there was a time where you could require supplemental instruction,
Yeah.
but that has since gone away. So it's a family student choice.
Okay. Okay. Thanks.
One thing I did want to mention to students in special education, we recently had our audit, and through the audit, one of the things that we really highlighted was the Keystone exams, especially biology at the high school. Our students with IEPs outperformed students without IEPs for first time taking that test. It was 46.7% versus the state average of 46.6. So we were very excited and proud of the work done there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and what you just mentioned, I mean, that holds true for PSAs and Keystones. Our students with an IEP are generally outperforming the state average general student population.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we had that in 6th grade math specifically as well, too.
Any other questions?
else?
Mrs. Rosales, I think you were.
Yeah, I just want to, this doesn't reflect that, but this year, something different that we did was put the pre-COVID data from these tests into the report. And I think it doesn't show, but it's happening that more of our grade levels in classes are back to or approaching pre-COVID levels, and the Keystones for literature and biology, those never lagged.
They're exceeding.
They stayed at pre-COVID levels. So I think that's something too. I mean, there are many more grade levels that are back to and trending where we used to be.
That's right. And we've got some 9th grade English teachers who are fired up to hear that.
Ready to celebrate.
That's where we test lift.
Okay, we good here? All right, we're going to go into PSSA ELA. So as you just saw on the prior slide, we hit our top decile for all of our ELA. This is looking at the district's programming 3 through 8 as measured by the PSSA. So we'll get into the Keystone data for literature in a moment as well. But you can see that we are growing on average across the grades. That bottom growth target is depicting for 3 through 8, last year's cohort of students, when you put them all together, are they maintaining their relative position and growing at least 1 year's growth as designed and defined by the PBOS assessment system. So you can see relatively stable performance over time across cohorts. So again, one of the things that we have to remind ourselves is these are different students each year that we look at it. So we have to know how they're performing as a grade level, as this slide depicts, as a system, and then what we're all doing behind the scenes. Teachers are able to look at student results down to the individual level. They can use Assessment Tracker, which is kind of a warehouse that we have that we can upload all of this data from STAR 360, Progress Learning, eMetric, all of the results that we get, we put in one place and can pull together. And teachers can log in and look at exactly where a student or their class, on average, is performing. And then that data obviously is looking at last year's standards and eligible content. And so it becomes really relevant to know what the current classroom-based assessments and benchmark exams are showing for the comparable area. So kind of tracking that over time, seeing where kids come in and being able to respond to it. So again, all of this, the strengths here, help lead into the programming later on, such as in the Keystone literature exam. I'll
Dr.
pause for a
Justice,
minute.
I
Yes.
just wanted to add, too, our students with IEPs met or were above in regard to growth in grade levels 4, 5, 7, and 8. So that's significant. So our students met and were above that growth in those areas. In addition, our students with GIPs, in terms of growth, they met or were more in grade levels 4, 5, 7, and 8. So we take note of that and how we can continue to improve. But that's definitely a positive, and we're celebrating it.
Very good. So your graph representation here is excellent. This is really easy to understand, and I appreciate you putting it in this form and going through it. I really like how it's laid out because you can absolutely see, you know, where we're at over the 3 years and then the states. My question about the state, would they stay flat? Did they grow? Did they decline? Just if you recall, where did the state go over those
So we would have
3
to
years?
pull this same report for 3 through 8 average and look back.
Okay, so
it's
you don't
just-
have
'cause
that
this is the
offhand.
aggregate. We have it by grade level. So
Okay.
that is in the appendix for every single grade level kind of by itself.
Okay.
We do see similar trends in many cases where we hold, like, we're usually 10 to 25 percentage points above the state in any given area. There are some where the state has gone down and we've gone up. So we are seeing that, but that's in every single, like, individual grade level.
Yeah, not that it was probably just something maybe you
Yeah.
may have known of something, but.
Historically, there's not a lot of movement when you factor the entire state on a particular assessment. Those averages stay pretty.
Okay, well, that's a good
Yeah.
point. Okay, thank you.
And I don't want to have us take credit for this graph as well. eMetric produces these summaries too for every single school district, which is amazing because it comes right from all of the data in raw form. They pull it into these. And as we were reviewing what was the best way to present these things and had many examples, and we met with a few board members offline to try to plan for this meeting, this was preferred. And so all we've done is kind of taken that achievement snapshot and the growth snapshot, put it on one so it was easy to just look at. Here's ELA as measured by the PSSA, grades 3 through 8.
Got it, okay. Well, I like it, it's well done, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, again, just a little insight into the findings then. The reality of this is, and the students are now taking an ELA assessment online, and that's different. It's a different experience for students to do that. Most have taken paper pencil, definitely K2, but, you know, we also have kids that are digital natives. They have been born in, not born, but raised a lot with technology. They're accustomed to it. But it also is, our students are going to take online for AP, SAT, and college and beyond, because that's what colleges and universities are doing. So we are preparing them for life after high school, but it is a different experience. So in the classroom, we have to provide them opportunities to interact with online text like they would with paper pencil text. So those are some shifts and changes that we're really mindful of. So when you see resources coming to you as recommendations that we want to purchase, we're looking for both hard copy and electronic, because it allows kids to interact with text online as well.
And Mrs. Kieran is going to comment on that.
Can I just ask a question, just to follow up, just so I understand? So everyone is taking it online now at Pine-Richland?
Mm-hmm.
And how many years have we been doing it exclusively online? When did that start?
2 years ago?
Yes.
Well, last year was last year or the
Their
year?
third grade was last year.
Third grade was
but-
first,
But
okay.
we had 4th and through 8 had started prior to that. So we included third grade last after talking with the staff to say, like, when do we think we're ready? Can we go ahead and make that jump? And so it became about talking and training. And I think Mrs. Kieran's going to speak to that here in a second too. Like, how can we help prepare them for that obstacle course,
Yeah.
the analogy that we've talked about.
Okay.
Yeah, I know PRVA was the first to try it out online since we were virtual, completely virtual that whole year. And then I believe the following years, whenever Eden Hall jumped online, and then some of the higher grade levels also did that, and then we brought it back down to third. So it's been a couple years, but as you can imagine, or if you can imagine, a third grader who's had a Chromebook now for only 3 years, and all of a sudden that's their test, right? Everything is online. So it's been a challenge for our teachers to try to figure out the best way to get the kids comfortable testing online, but also, like, scratch paper is still a good thing, right? Whenever we're writing a rough draft, to write and change things and edit, as opposed to just having that computer and type, and hit submit. That's been a challenge. We've worked hard in third grade across the district, bringing everything online. So taking their ELA tests, converting them to Google Forms, just so they're used to, reading something and going in and being able to put their answers in online. So it's a lot of that, not just the final test, but leading up to it. And it was something I think that was kind of an oversight at first, right? And then we got these scores and we're like, what can we do to better prepare them? Well,
it seemed pretty obvious after we thought about it, right? We need to get these kids testing online more. So it's been a challenge in third grade overall, but I think we've managed to convert everything online. All of our new programs have online and components, but the kids are getting a lot more comfortable, but it's still, you know, we want them to work out math problems and then input the answer. Even just understanding the different tools, like the online system has tools where kids can go in and highlight pieces of text, or using online calculators. Like, they have to be comfortable with all that before we just place the computer in front of them for PSSAs. So that has been a real big change within our curriculum.
So what I'm hearing you say, I think, from everyone is that you prefer paper and pencil, but you're required to do online, and so you're stepping up to the challenge to achieve that because we have to do it on the online.
I think it's a little bit of both, though. We
Is it?
see that in the future, like Dr. P was just saying, like if you're in college or university now, you're using Blackboard or Angel or any number of other
Okay.
online platforms. So we see part of it as our duty to prepare them to be able to learn online and have learning management systems that they can interact with too. So the age at which that occurs, of course, you know, could be negotiable, but I think they're prepared, they're able to do it. It's just a new way of thinking for us and a new approach for us to help train them in that manner. I do want to give a shout out. We have third grade teachers right behind us, our two ALCs, Mr. Vins and Mrs. Prine. Mrs. Prine was one of the PRVA teachers and also helped develop a lot of the training resources for the team, the whole third grade team, rolling it out so that everybody felt supported. And we did things like everyone practiced on the same day so that if we log in the building, we know that we can have faith in the Wi-Fi, right? Like any of those little things that come up. How do we problem solve for the charging stations if somebody comes in with a Chromebook that isn't, you know, up and running? So all those little logistical pieces. I don't know if there's anything else you guys want to add to like the routine or if that hits it, but it's up to you.
So I think one of our biggest challenges, even though we recognized that we wanted to move online and we were prepared to do that, the first year I think we did it in the schools was the typing factor, right? These kids have to actually know how to type their response. When we were in PRVA, they typed all the time. That was how they submitted everything to us when we were on, you know, virtual that year. So those kids were used to it, and that's how we took the PSSA for the first time that year online. But then when we came back to school the following year, and I was back in the classroom, one of the challenges was we weren't doing everything online, so now we had that barrier of typing. And since then, we have incorporated more typing within our classroom. We've done projects and writings that allow the kids to type, and we've worked with our computer teachers to also have, you know, typing legitimate practice within the computer classroom. And then we also have like different games and softwares that we use within the classroom that they can use for RAM time. And I will say right now, my kids are so into that typing race where they have to, nitro type, and they have to type as fast as they can because then their little race cars move, and so they're motivated to beat their friends, and they're typing, and they don't even realize that they're learning to practice typing in sentences and where the keys are.
Yeah, good explanation, thank you.
So I just want to, do you have something else?
I was just going to say real quick, whenever you mentioned about the preference with being online or paper pencil, I mean, in the big scheme of things, we do get our results sooner, so it's more applicable for us to get the results in the summer so we can start prepping for the upcoming year. Whenever it was all paper pencil, it was October, November before we even got the data, then by the time you dive into it. So that logistical piece does help us actually use the, you know, data for action, which is what we always talk about.
We were ahead of the curve, but the curve is now a requirement, and so we'll be fine as we go forward. I want, everything they just said is true in terms of sort of the how students show what they know, but it's far more important, I think, that we focus on the actual curriculum content, skills, knowledge, eligible content. And the comment I wanted to make is, we have 4 of our third grade teachers here, but the level of collaboration between, again, Chris and Patty are the ALCs, they're both at Wexford, but they work with the principals and with their third grade colleagues all the time to ensure that whether you're at hand.
Anything else on ELA, PSSA?
I do have a
Yeah,
question.
Mrs. Rosales.
So I'm looking at third grade ELA, and while we're performing higher than the state, but the trend still seems to be downward, whereas the state is upward. and I'm seeing that our mean scores, they were pretty consistent up until last year. Is this because of the online?
So third grade ELA, as I'm looking at the report on page 13, is that where you are?
I am on 13, yeah.
So I wouldn't necessarily say it's a downward trend in our data. And I think the state is stepping up at a similar interval, having had, a dip and
I mean, we can look at where the trend line is, and I would say the trend line on those bar graphs aren't going up, at least not yet. We have a movement up, but, I mean, that's not the point. If you look at the mean scores, I think you'll see what I'm talking about, which the mean scores were pretty consistent, even after, pre and post-COVID, but then last year, they dropped by 50 points, and that mean. And then we see some movement from the advanced students, where it's actually cut in half, almost.
right, in different cohorts, right? There's that piece.
Is that, what are you thinking? Is that because of the movement online and testing online, or is there something else that you're attributing to
Yeah, so I
that
think
change?
really when it's the same curriculum, same resources, same teachers for the most part, everything's the same except for the students and their levels when they come in. Sometimes it's literally that. So I know we've looked even at the percentage of students qualifying who are in special education within a given grade level. Sometimes that percentage is higher in one year than another. I know Hans had looked at that as one point of data as well. So students are getting supports and they're achieving, but their achievement is going to look much different, and they still might be achieving way higher than the state average even at that point. So I think if we zoom out and think about, they're scoring extremely well. We are using the same system, and we're trying to look at where were those areas of need, and when we assess this year's group of students, recognizing that they're different in third grade, are they having strengths and success in those areas right now or not? And if they're not, what do we do about it now and earlier to try to make sure that they do meet with success? So of course, we're always trying to improve. We want the students to perform their best, but knowing that they're different kids over time, that's a tricky thing. It's also information, knowing where those students performed, had opportunities in their performance in third grade going to fourth grade. So this year's fourth grade teachers, looking at the ELA scores, can see where students might not have been doing so well. And as they're beginning their benchmark assessments, classroom-based assessments and things this year, probing to see if that's coming along or if there's something that they need to do to assist. Backing up to the whole K-12 lens for this as well, everything that's happening in third grade is made better by everything that happens in K-2. And within ELA specifically, we've been using Hegarty, we've been using 95% group. These are things that you've helped approved over the last few years and we have in place now. This year's group of third graders are the first group, not who are reflected in this report, but who are sitting in our third grade classrooms right now, are the first group to have come through with that added benefit. So we're hoping that their comprehension skills have improved. Those are things that we're looking for and seeing now. And then, as you know, we purchased that professional development, kind of the instructional approach tool for Morphine Magic to try to increase their vocabulary and their word attack skills when it comes to multisyllabic words. So I think all in all, we're looking at the system, making tweaks and improvements, and we recognize that K-2, we had some things solidly in place that then needed to begin again in third, and now that is a third through sixth initiative this year to try to bolster and improve that programming. So while we're looking at this, we're also already looking towards what we hope this current cohort will be performing at, given the successes and changes in the programming. I don't know if there's anything else, anybody? Yeah. The one thing that I wanted to mention too, when we get these results at every building within the grade levels, so the ALCs, but also the principals are helping to facilitate professional learning communities where they're looking at the data. It's called different things. So we're talking about PLCs at this level, data summits at the high school and the middle school, but it's the same thing. It's everybody making sense of that data and determining what it is that we can do to improve things. And I don't know if you want to speak at all, Mrs. Brizo, to like what that looks like when the data comes out, like how the teams meet and what they're thinking about in their different departments.
Sure. So we utilize PLC time, but it's really just collaborative time among our team members with all different perspectives and lenses and roles within our school. And we look at the data, and we'll look at historical data as well as immediate data. So look at some of the trends that we're seeing in the PSSA data, as well as look at our STAR data and common assessments to really target and plan our instructions to ensure that it's meeting the needs of the current cohort of students that our teachers have. So really digging in, while this is high level, we dig into those specific skills and standards and look at what is our past practice and instruction looked like. Is it working with our students, and what do we need to maybe tweak to tailor it to the students that we have now, considering their interest and skills and abilities. So it's a really great time where it's collaborative. At our building, it occurs bi-weekly, depending on grade level and department, where we can work together and we really focus on that area that Dr. Miller addressed with alignment and time and feedback. So we do have some of our ALCs here tonight, so they're key leaders in a lot of this work and really facilitating with the teams and making sure that we're focused on continuous improvement.
And something that they've done as an administrative team in consultation with the ALCs is find a way to creatively use more time for that. So, typically you'd have 30 minutes before the start of the day to try to get something together and really look at it. So at Eden Hall, because they also have the explore time in the beginning of the day, they're able to get coverage for members of the team, have folks come together and benefit from that additional 40 minutes of time as they come together. So just some changes in the way that it has happened. People don't feel as pressured to get back to the class and the thing that they were doing. They can really breathe for a minute, focus on what's in front of them, make a collaborative plan together, and then go back and implement in the classroom. So that's been a positive change just in the use of time and the structure of the collaborative opportunities.
Yeah, and Dr. Justice, we also wanted to mention too is through our multi-tiered systems of support, we're constantly looking at data as teams. We're reviewing that data and we're seeing, okay, how can we meet the needs of the students right within the classroom? What if a student needs a little bit more intensive supports? And what if they need even like a tier 3 supports to really meet their reading needs if they are struggling? So we're always looking at data, whether that's STAR data, COGAT, Acadians, and we're really as MTSS teams really supporting our students.
Most recently, too, with our student services group, we've been meeting with like our Wilson groups as well as those who are in Sunday, so some of our tier 3 interventions. And when we're meeting with them, we're analyzing some of that general outcome data. We progress monitor bi-weekly using Acadians, so we'll like dig deeper with those groups as well, just like they're doing with the tier 1 students, just to make sure they are growing, they are achieving, and we're meeting their needs.
Can I add something, even though this isn't high school data? So what Mara and Greta said and why that's so important, just to kind of help everybody understand, if you look at the students and the percentages on this chart alone, that's below basic or basic, those are some of the students that need the most help and support in our entire school district. So being able to provide all of those resources and enrichment and support to them and have those programs that help grow them, even if a student only moves from below basic to basic, that's impacting our growth measure and one of the biggest factors that we can control for our students. So I'll chat a little bit more about that when we get to the high school slide, but that's vitally important to the operation of our schools and the growth of our students.
Absolutely. And some of our students aren't even taking PSSA, they're actually taking the PASO, which is an alternative assessment, and we've seen 6% of those students grow, and they're actually able to reach out now and take the PSSA, which is an awesome feat as well for them.
Okay, so we added a little bit of extra information on the ELA slide, so that'll help give you context for both math and science and the Keystones as well, because it's the same system, different content area in terms of the team analysis and collaborative approach. So as we look at mathematics, you see, again, relatively stable, slightly increasing trends over time within mathematics performance and the program overall. So again, summary level of PSSA grades 3 through 8, we see that they're exceeding the growth standards. So they're actually outperforming the growth level that would be expected of those cohorts and those groups of students as they move through time. So I will also see if our ALCs who are behind me or any teachers or principals want to mention anything else about math specifically. Okay, so I think one thing that I'll mention from a programmatic standpoint, we know that computation is important, but we also know that concepts are important, and we are trying to move from what would be a more traditional look in the past of just computation, this is how you do it, replicate these steps, you don't really understand what it is you're doing. You may be able to replicate it when the directions say to do it and you understand what you're supposed to do for that test, but you can't really apply it to the real world. So something we're working on now is making sure that we understand the why behind the math also. So we have to have very strong computation skills, but we also need to understand that there are multiple approaches to solving a problem and how to go about that. And all of that came from our in-depth program review for mathematics. And so those are things that we're digging into. We have STAR 360 that helps us with some of the benchmark assessments within math. We also, for our students at the elementary level, have Redbird and Freckle that can help us with some of those. And as they get older, in 6th grade and up, we also have the ALEX programming so that students can, again, see that. And our teams have really done a great job equipping themselves to dig into those reports, get to the individual level, the class level, and that's one of the reasons why you see that growth even within the 6th grade. It kind of was the first model using ALEX at the elementary level where we saw some really great data for action results where they were getting extremely high achievement and great growth, and so that has continued over time, and we're very proud of that.
Again, just real quick with some of the insight into the findings. So historically in mathematics, data, analysis, statistics, probability, we struggle with that. It typically comes at the end of a learning sequence, at the end of the year. So we have to think about that. So that modifies perhaps with some curricular alignment of when those topics are taught. So instead of waiting, we can integrate some of that, and that's some work we're doing on the curriculum side of bringing some of those units earlier in or spiraling back, like I talked about earlier, in an area where we have historically struggled. Data analysis, probability, statistics, you can bring that into any unit and integrate some of those concepts earlier on, and we're going to do that.
Questions about math?
I just wanted to add, Dr. Justice, in terms of math, our students that receive special ed services, they met or were above in regard to growth and grade levels 4, 5, 6, and 8, which was definitely a positive and a celebration, as well as our students with GIPs. We saw growth that was above or well above in grades 5 and 6.
Excellent. Moving on into science, again, we're seeing great performance from our students, relatively stable. We have top decile and growth from both the 4th and 8th grade cohorts this past year. And we are working, obviously, on integrating those STEEL standards. So we know that we had our science mini IDPR in this past year, and we are working on professional development. We are looking at the manner in which we're instructing. And so as you are familiar, we have Amplify Science as our resource to support our curriculum K-8. The general approach to that resource is to use inquiry and phenomenon-based education, which is exactly in line with what STEELS would want. How we got there was by doing that in-depth program review and looking ahead and seeing that, and if using things like the next generation science standards, took an approach like that and that it achieved better results. Students thought like a scientist, they got the critical thinking, the problem solving, they really developed those cross-cutting skills, and then we could work on the concepts that accompanied it. So I don't want to put anybody on the spot. I know Mrs. Dunker's been working with our 6th grade in terms of looking at their curricular approach. They're switching right now to a more inquiry-based instruction, same learning goals, same curriculum. The manner of which they're teaching it is more engaging to the students, and it's helping them actually apply the things that they're studying. Anything else that we would want to add to that team? Yeah.
While they're passing the mic, again, back to the 3 circles. So the curriculum, the learning goals, same, but the instructional approach used by the teacher varies a little bit to help students develop different skills and ways of solving problems.
I just wanted to briefly say another celebration of our teams, especially looking at the science data and the integration of the STEEL standards across the board here at Pine-Richland for K-12, is that our teams are really excited about doing that work, and they're not waiting for us as administration to do that work. And so shout out to our ALCs, and I know Mrs. Myler's behind me, Heidi. But with Mr. Cawley working with the secondary group and Mrs. Brizo and Mr. Rose supporting us at the elementary group K-6, our teams are already diving into those standards and already seeing how our curriculum is already aligned with NGSS and how we're making sure that Amplify and any resource that we have is already not just aligned to the standards, but also what does that look like in practice for our teachers. And so it's so exciting when you open up those documents and work is happening continuously. They're not waiting for that leadership of the building administration. They really do take a shared ownership of it, and so that's something we should really be proud of. They're not waiting to do the work. They're excited for it, and they're eager, and really when they see those results, not just at the end of the year with that lag data, but they're really excited about the common results, the common assessments rather, that happen organically throughout the year. So that teamwork is something to be very proud of, and we're very excited to continue that work here.
Very good message. You delivered it well. Thank you.
An additional shout out to Mrs. Myler as well for being willing to help us get the CDT set up, because we knew that the new questions for the PSSA this year, especially in the 5th grade science, were going to look different. And we didn't know what they would look like, but we knew the CDT would be modeled after them. So we have all of the teachers set up with an account, and they're able to give sub-portions of the assessment. They can project it on their board to use as an instructional tool. So pull up one question and have the whole class look at the test-taking strategy, but also the content behind it, and really kind of pull it apart so that they're best equipped to approach those when they see, a whole passage of a lot of text and a lot of academic vocabulary. How do you make sense of that and solve whatever the problem is in front?
Classroom diagnostic tool,
Yes.
CDT.
Sorry.
So again, there's lots of parts and pieces that our teachers are aware of and find ways to use.
Any other questions for science? Okay. Now we're heading into the Keystone. So what you see in front of you is the summary of last year's first-time test takers. In terms of their performance, you can clearly see that they're doing extremely well, and they are so well above the growth standard that they've actually earned the extra blue comma at their parenthesis at the end of that diagram. So they're actually making growth far exceeding what we would expect in terms of that programming. And like we said, that can look different. We do have a handful of students who take the Algebra Keystone at Eden Hall, even students who are accelerated through mathematics. So when you think about growing your highest achieving students, yes, they still have to take the 6th grade math exam, for instance, but they're also finishing courses like that, like the Keystone, and need to be able to perform that. 7th and 8th grade, obviously, taking that as well. Dr. P, anything else?
Just again, I just said it earlier, just really proud of our middle school students and teachers and how they're performing. So that number you see right there, the 78.6, that combines all first-time test takers across all of our schools, middle school, high school. But just to give you some other numbers, 7th and 8th grade, 87.7% of the students that took it for the first time scored proficient or advanced. 7th grade only, 98.3% of this. Now again, these kids they're math people. I mean, that's the 7th grade, they're taking algebra, their geometry in 8th, and their algebra 2 by 9th. So it's in their DNA, but they're doing very well. 8th graders, again, majority of our kids take it. 8th grade only, 84.9% proficient or advanced. So really proud. We need to focus on those students that didn't make proficiency, like I talked about earlier, and we've got some ideas there.
Excellent. Moving into literature, we've already mentioned this, but literally there is no one who has scored higher than us on this assessment this past year. We are number 1, so congratulations again, team, who are standing over there. Yes. And so there are excellent results over time. You can see here what is now exceeding the pre-pandemic 3-year average, which is what Mrs. Brzales was referring to earlier. They've maintained and actually exceeding that level now and attained a top score in 2024. So that's the highest score that we've seen in recent years on that exam. And it's really thinking about how the team comes together and they're able to utilize that collaborative time. I think the data summits, I don't know, Dr. Hernandez, if you want to pop in on that as well, but 9th grade ELE teachers being able to meet and look at all of that certainly helps.
Yeah, definitely. So exciting to be here to talk to you about data. Super pumped about the work that our team did. Important, I think, to point out that these test results here for literature are our 9th grade students. I point that out because in a lot of school districts that are many of our local competitors in Allegheny County, they delay the Keystone test in literature until 10th grade so that the students have an additional year to prepare and an additional year to mature. We take it in 9th grade and we feel comfortable and confident in doing that because we want them to meet that proficiency or better and then be able to be ready to access some of our higher level courses. So the score was outstanding last year. It was admirable, but the work that went into it was even more impressive to us. We have an excellent group of 9th grade English teachers. I know in many ways last year with core text and resources, it was a little bit of a difficult year, but behind the scenes, this team was doing amazing work. This year, for the first time ever, they have a common planning period during the day, and you walk the halls up there. I think you guys are always talking to each other during period 4 and prepping and preparing. And they're just such a wonderful team. They work together to understand eligible content, to make curriculum adjustments, to look at data, to identify strengths and focus on areas of growth. That the scores are really impressive. Similar to what I commented on earlier, I wanted to draw attention here, then again, when we get to the bio, if you look on the far right here, what's in the blue, that 30.5, that's the percent of our testers that were advanced last year. You compare that to the state average, it's probably triple, if not a little bit more. That's exciting and that's encouraging because those are many of our students that will go on to take an advanced placement class pretty soon, and that's telling us that they're ready and they should be challenged more appropriately with more difficult classes as time goes on. Similarly, you can see that we only had 11 kids perform below basic. Those are the students that a lot of the programs that Mario and Greta spoke about get that extra remediation and support during the school day. There were so many students on this list that had moved from below basic to basic or were like a question away from proficient, that number could have even been significantly higher. Mrs. Brusels, earlier you had mentioned like the pre-COVID scores. This is the second highest achievement total that this group has had since at least 2015, if not prior. So
And
they
I'd
just-
add that
yeah.
advanced group is the highest, at least that I've seen data for,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, so we just want to compliment the team. So you have Derek Majors, Rachel Spihar, Alyssa Mitchell here from the English team. I don't know if anybody else is, or I missed them, but they, along with our other teachers on that group, have done tremendous work with our 9th grade students in our curriculum and in the programs we offer. So thank you guys for coming. Wanted to be able to point that out.
So I'm going to add a couple things to that. The first is shared ownership. So again, we look at the data, we drive back to the systems and the people. So the people, the teachers, have shared ownership. I mean, they care. They care about the results. They care about the kids that are in their classroom, and they're taking what they see here, and they're trying to come up with strategies, share ideas in order to best meet the needs of kids. Again, that shared ownership is a critical part of the culture of the district that's been built. I thought where Dr. H was going was that it's not just, as great as that is, they'll be the first to say it's not just what happens in 9th grade. It is 100%, and we've heard it again and again tonight, built on what is happening at the middle school. Students don't wake up into literature in 9th grade. They come through a system of learning all the way through, and so the talent and hard work of the teachers at the middle school and Eaton Hall and all of those in any content area that spirals like ELA does, it is a team effort to get there, and they would be the first to say that as well.
So I just want to add on to the point Dr. Miller just mentioned. Dr. Justice had mentioned earlier that they had the #1 score in Pennsylvania. That's our current seniors that are in the high school right now. So by the end of 11th grade, through first-time testers, second-time test takers, and third time, that 94%, so 94% of our current seniors were proficient or advanced. It's remarkable. You can see it in this senior class's AP scores alone. Like they've blown it out of the park even before this school year started, and they'll continue to do so. But it does speak to the, I think, pre-K to 12 system that we have here and all the work that happens to make sure our kids are college and career and community ready.
Excellent. Well done. Well done. Very
One
much.
more thing on this, because I think it's important. The growth measures, important for us to understand as well. And with literature, if you want to get down and dirty again into the report and you see the quintiles, the lowest quintiles, so those are the kids that are in our 0 to 20 percentile, their growth is outstanding. So that means the kids that are in our academic or our language arts course, they're growing against the state of Pennsylvania. If you go to the 5th quintile, those are the 80th to 100th percentile. Those are students that are probably in our gifted program and beyond. They're growing significantly, and you see that in that growth data. So across all 5 quintiles, from 1 through 5, there's growth. Now, that's true across all 3 of our Keystone assessments, but specific to literature, you're really going to see it in quintile 1 and quintile 5. Lowest achieving students, highest achieving students.
Okay. All right, moving into biology. This will be the last Keystone, and I'll hand it over to Dr. P for the remainder of the assessments at the secondary. You can see again that our students are performing well above the state average in the cohort in terms of their growth. They have been maintaining and exceeding what we would expect them to do for that. And our biology team is probably the most mature in using some of those progress monitoring measures. We've highlighted them over time, utilizing progress learning, the way they come together, own the results, collaborate, and really make sense of it. But they exceed their pre-pandemic 3-year average by 11%, which is pretty significant, and they have completely surpassed all of that with excellent results. And so I think it's the way in which the team comes together. They are still, work is not done, right? They are working on the STEEL standards integration, understanding what that means, how to keep equipping our students the best that they can.
So again, not exclusively ninth graders, but mostly ninth graders here. We do have a track of students who will take earth science when they come in at ninth grade, but primarily ninth grade testers. That's not common in every high school. So we're proud of that data, that it stands up against other high-performing schools, and our students are taking the test a year earlier than in most cases. 50.4% of our students were advanced in biology last year. Amazing. Like, it speaks to their readiness to take AP classes and eventually become college ready. I mean, that's so much to be proud of and celebrate. Also important to keep in mind that, I know it's been mentioned a couple times, the STEEL standards is impacting curriculum and how we're going to have to teach the course in the future. Ms. Dunker, she had mentioned that a little bit earlier, but Mr. Colley at the high school is leading that team and working with them to make those changes already. So that's going to be a bit of a process for us over the next couple years as we change, adapt, and think a little bit differently about instruction. Fortunately, it's a very veteran team that's very on top of it. They're working extremely hard and are doing many of the same learning activities in class that you would see through the STEEL standards because they've been preparing for things like next-gen science standards for years.
And back to that idea of a system, professional development. So at the AIU, they've been helpful. Mr. Colley, you've gone to trainings in multiple places at multiple times by himself with others. So we're connecting within the region to learn as well, sharing practices across school districts. So again, this is all part of the system that it takes to make things happen.
So they're already nervous about the spring of 2026 because that's when we'll shift to the STEELS assessment. What we've said to them is relax, because again, they're ahead of the game because of in-depth program review. That study helped them predict that we were going to need to be there in years, and we're there now across the state. Other places are not in the readiness level that we are because of that study. That's a positive thing. There's a chance our scores will dip the first year that we have the 2026 STEELS. That's okay, because what we will do is we'll learn from that experience and we'll get better like we do with everything else. I mean, that is the nature of what we do, but they're competitive, they want to do well, they found success, they want to maintain that. That's all awesome, but we don't want to stress them out too much either.
I know this has been mentioned a couple times, but I don't think we can celebrate it enough. The biology Keystone exam is really hard. I mean, it is a big test. Most teachers will tell you they wish they had 210 days to teach it compared to probably what's 170, 175. Our special education students alone have outperformed the regular education state average. Like, that doesn't happen hardly anywhere, and just want to kind of, again, acknowledge the good work. We co-teach biology in a lot of our sections with Mrs. Vitro. She does a wonderful job working with our students and our biology teachers, so it's just much to be very, very proud
Yes,
of.
students will receive-
Co-teach is, explain what that is.
Yeah, so we have a regular education teacher and a special education teacher, and they're the assume responsibility, planning, instruction, grading, providing feedback. They work with students that are gifted or special education through an IEP or regular education, and it's really so much to be proud of. That doesn't happen very many places, so we just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, and our students that do receive special education services, they scored 46.7 proficient or advanced in comparison to the state, which is 46.6, which is really awesome, and we definitely do want to celebrate it.
Yeah.
One more note too, our professional development committee, we have an oversight committee, we have board members serving on that, thank you for that. We have many staff members, a cross-section of our group, and we also have community liaisons, parents, et cetera. And we've been working every year, we're trying to refresh that group because we need a certain cross-section per each building, and obviously our kids and our parents are growing up and leaving us, so as we replace those folks, we have additional experts. Within the science arena, we're very fortunate to have Mrs. Kristen Rice, who is actually one of the Allegheny Intermediate Unit math and science collaborative leaders. She sits on that committee and helps as a thought partner through all of that, and we've spoken with her, and our ALCs have also reached out for different professional development opportunities, and they've remained a force even in terms of the in-depth program review and all the things that we're trying to learn. So right here within our community, both a parent and an expert in all things SEALs and those things that are coming out, we really benefit from that group as a thought partner.
Going back on the data too with bio, that's the highest they've scored since at least 2015, so it's very positive for that department.
And am I reading this right? It's number 3 in the state.
Is it 4 or 3? I think we were 4th as a district, 6th as a school. Is that right, Dr. P?
I don't recall off the top of my
Yeah,
head.
it's very
I
high.
think it
They're
says
doing well.
number 3 in the
Yeah.
report I'm looking at.
We are
So
number
I think
3 as a district. We
As a
are,
district,
indeed.
so-
Thank you for calling it out,
Applause.
Mr.
Yeah.
Salas.
So again, it's another very high-end performance. Thank you. Yeah.
All right, we're going to shift into, college readiness assessments. Again, high stakes. You feel the pressure when you're taking an ACT, SAT, AP exam for sure. Not that you don't in Keystone, too, because that is a graduation requirement for us. But just a little difficult to see some of the numbers here, so you'd probably want to be in the report. But left-hand side shows you a little bit of that historical results pre-COVID. That's the green. Those are the green bars on the left. On the right-hand side, you see the kind of gray with the red outline. That compares us to state and national averages. So for the ACT, very consistent over time here at Pine-Richland. Biggest change I wanted to highlight here, the number of students taking the ACT. That number has really dropped off significantly over time. And that's not just a PR trend, that's a national trend for this particular assessment. We only had 46 students in the class of 2024 even take the ACT. So that's something we have to think about when we're discussing findings and next steps. When you have a smaller sample of students, we have to consider that. SAT, similar the way that we designed this for the left-hand side, pre-COVID numbers, and then our current Pine-Richland is that salmon orange color, and then again state, we have global here for SAT. And again, the consistency there for our students of how they're performing in evidence-based reading and writing and mathematics. It's been, again, historically pretty consistent for students. We see a little drop in SAT participation, but not as drastic as you saw with ACT. So students are still taking this, but you do hear that some colleges and universities have gone away from the requirement for SAT or ACT for entry determinations. And that's something that, students are aware of, and they're making those decisions. But in terms of, using the results, what we believe we can do better is really looking at those combined results from, because all of our students take PSAT, we pay for that for our 11th graders, and really using those results to guide our teachers in making some curricular instructional decisions to better support student readiness to take that. We still offer and partner with a local organization that comes here on campus that offers additional tutoring and support for students, and that's going to continue at a discounted price. But we think there's some opportunities us in really using the results to guide back into curriculum instruction for SAT and a little bit with ACT. Okay, and then finally, we want to talk a little bit about advanced placement. I know Dr. H will want to share a lot of things here, but just at a higher level, you see that table on the left-hand side. We shared this last year, so we were able to achieve to that gold standard. And over here, it explains a little bit. I got to use, think about 3 mice. Okay, this one, this is Pine-Richland. So we're looking for the percentage of students in our graduating class that took one or more AP exam. We're encouraging kids to stretch themselves and take those courses and take those exams. So to reach gold criteria at 65%, we had 68% of our graduates. I know we're talking about encouraging even more students. So with that encouragement, we may see the percentage of 3+s go down, and that's okay. It also helps students in guiding their path past high school to say, maybe I'm not ready for this experience yet, and that will guide me in some other direction, and that saves time and money for families, and that's an important thing to consider. At the college credit, it is the percentage of students that scored a 3+ on an AP exam. If you get a 3 or higher, 3 means readiness for finding success in that course, and obviously the higher you get, the more ready you are to find success in that particular course. The gold standard was 35%. We were at 54% from the graduating class of 2024. We're actually at the platinum level there because the expectation of platinum is 50% of your students. And then the college optimization, that is students taking 5 or more AP courses and tests over the course of their high school experience. The gold level is 10%, we're at 11%. So 37 students in the class of 2024 took 5 or more AP class, and that's pretty awesome. So that's great for us, great for our students. There was only really one other school district or high school in this local area that met the gold standard, and I think there was one at the platinum. But again, we're in a really good place with participation and achievement on the AP exams. The graph on the right-hand side, again, similar structure to what we showed you in the past. Pre-COVID, we're in the salmon color. We've got 500 students last year took an AP exam. Of those 500, 420 scored a 3 or better. And again, really, really positive results. And this shows you a little bit more in terms of the percentage of students that scored the 3+. Since 2017, that 84% is the highest percent of kids that scored the 3+. And we're really excited about the number of tests that were taken, 1,046 AP exams taken across all of our students at the high school last year. Frank, anything you want to?
Maybe if you can go back one slide and we'll come back to this one.
Just talk to them.
One of the reasons I was so excited about the percent of students that we had testing in advance is those students will likely go on to take these courses. But one of the things that we did in our Q1 assembly, and this was a school-wide virtual assembly that we did this year, is we shared with our students like what we mean by saying college, career, and community ready. And one of the outcomes of that, and one of the things that we shared, is that we really generally hope every single student in our high school considers taking at least one AP class before they graduate. And the reason for that is simple. It's the biggest way that they learn to challenge themselves, to engage with rigorous curriculum, to push themselves. We don't necessarily want them to load up on 15 AP classes over the course of high school, but consider taking at least one to push themselves and learn at like the college pacing and rigor of a course that we know is certified by the College Board, that speaks to a student being college ready. So that's something that we really are trying to promote with our students for college readiness. A lot of good data up here. We're really proud to be one of 2 high schools with gold status. Just to kind of give you a little bit of a sneak peek, this year we had, last year we had 500 students testing. This year we're projected to have about 560 students testing. So that number will continue to go up with the number of testers that we have and kids that are taking these classes. We're really excited about that. Our current senior class, their percentages, if you would plug them into that chart right there, are phenomenal. And it speaks to all the work that's been done with them throughout the year. So we're looking forward to being able to share that with you next year. Dr. P, if you can go forward one slide real quick. And just to kind of, again, promote the academic rigor in some of the courses our students are taking. We had 1,046 students test last year, which was the second highest in that 8 or 9 year history. We're set to have about a little over 1,300 exams this year, so we see another positive uptick in the amount of kids that are taking those tests, and we're really excited about that. It may hit the percent that score a 3 or higher, and we'll look at that data when it comes through, but we do care even more about engaging our kids in some rigorous classes and met with a caring instructor to push themselves and grow over the course of the school year.
I just wanted to make a comment. So looking at, and it's not in the slide, but the AP scores, you know, Pine-Richland scores consistently above the national average as well in most of the courses that we're offering. And I think especially given, I mean, I probably can't characterize our conversation, Dr. Miller, from this morning, but given the fact that in a lot of cases, students across the country are self-selecting and not really encouraged to take it under, you know, every circumstance, but, you know, you're probably getting your best test takers to do the AP test. But our students, especially in the sciences, which we just talked about, are doing really, really well on this exam, which I think says a lot about the work that our teachers are doing, especially in these AP courses. So I was very impressed when I compared it.
Very much.
The other
point. Okay.
challenge we have is we've tried in the past to get other school districts to share AP results with us so we can have some comparators, but there's differences of how they do things. Like we require our students to take the exam, some don't. So the students that are taking it in other places where you may see the percentage even higher, they're choosing to take it because they're probably at a better readiness, like they feel really confident. Some of our students aren't feeling great, but they go into it knowing there's an expectation. Because in college, it's like, hey, I don't feel like taking, that's not a choice. You've got to take the exam at the end of the course, so get ready for that while you're here, and then we believe that's the right thing to do. And you earn that, extra quality points with this as well. So those are all things that are important when we compare. Even nationally, it's tough to say that because nationally, school districts do it so many different ways. So we just have to keep those things in mind.
Well, knowing what I know, it's even more impressive that our students score as well as they do.
Thank you.
Okay, last section is the portrait of a graduate. It's my favorite part of this because everything else is a snapshot in time. It is a image of a student on a particular day, and we all know on a particular day we can have a great day or a miserable day. And we are sharing results over that one snapshot in time. This is about the person that they have become with us in the 13 years if they started in kindergarten. This is the best part of what we get to see when they get ready for life after high school. So we're looking at choices. Are they getting into the schools that they want to get into? The range shows a little skewed with the graph, but you see that last year 85% of our kids got into the first or second choice. That's what we want for them. We prepare them to get where they want to go. They apply to those schools, and in vast majority of cases, they are getting there. Like we talked about with ACT and SAT, we see a little decline in the percentage of students going to 2 or 4 year college. Okay, whatever, if their path is different to trade or technical school or undecided at first, that's their path. What we're really trying to work on with the CEW standards, career education and work standards, is to develop those learning activities that are going to be so meaningful. It's going to help them figure out where they want to go. Again, it saves them time and money if we can do so. And like I've told my kids, if you can find what you love, you'll be great at it. And that's what we want for our kids, is to find what they love to do. So that's what a lot of this is figuring themselves out. With all these assessments and things that have happened for 13 years, they're ready to pursue their path.
Dr. Pasquinelli,
Yeah.
can we just add, and through our special education audit, something that we wanted to share too is 60% of our students that receive special education services attend a 2-year or 4-year college. That's great. Something we continue to improve upon is those transition services and supports for our students, whether that be vocational, 2-year, 4-year college, as well as career and moving forward. So we're real excited about that.
This is something I know at the high school, and any of the administrators can talk about this, but it is connecting students to school. It's huge. And we talk about this not just at the high school. From the time you enter school, finding some way to connect to an adult, a person, a team, a club, a group is so important for our kids. And we harp on it, but we really work to try to find at least one activity. Not that they just join for a week, but they join and they become part of something, and that brings them in. Dr. Miller mentioned that before. For some kids, that's what gets them out of bed in the morning, and that's okay, because then once they're here, then we have them and we've got work to do with them. But connecting them to at least one activity is a measure that we feel is appropriate for this report, because it's a sign of they're connected to Pine-Richland in some way that's important. Our goal is 100, and we're not there, so. Across all of our schools, again, we talk about stakeholder survey. I don't know any other school districts that do this, but they value student voice, but we value it to the point where annually we ask our students, what do you think? And then we do something not many places do. We share with our board and community what our students think of us. That's a challenging thing to do sometimes. And then most importantly, we take what they said and we make adjustments appropriately. And the next 3 slides are a little bit of that. So this is specific to our graduating class. This would be the class, the last couple of graduating classes. You can see what they had to say about us, and we're trying to make adjustments to the culture and climate. But this is not in any way unique to the high school. K through 12, our teachers and administrators are looking at what kids have to say about us, and they're trying to improve that experience. So when you come up and you get out of bed every day, you're excited about the place you're about to go to.
Can I add just one thing there too? So we also follow up on what we get in terms of the quantitative data from these in our buildings. So we talk with the 3rd, 6th, 8th, and 12th grade students about this more in a smaller cross section. We have little leadership committees where we go in and we ask, like, what is it that makes you really enjoy school? Why do you really like learning here? And that colors in kind of some of the context around it so we can reinforce the good things and learn a little bit about what maybe isn't going so well that we can try to help change. And I know that Eden Hall, and they're not the only ones, it's happening, I believe, at the middle school as well. Some of our principals are putting into the e-news, like Mrs. Brizo just did this, for parents that we're going to ask kids 3 of the questions, like, do you enjoy coming to school to learn, which is part of the annual stakeholder survey, again, as a little like mid-year checkpoint to see how we're doing. And then that gives us data to then talk to the kids again and say, like, how can we better make this experience work for you?
So you can see this as I'm satisfied with my overall experience at school. I'm satisfied with the range of opportunities, so this gets into our programs, again, and we're rich in programs here at Pine-Richland, and that's an awesome thing about us, and the students are, again, excited about that. You can see that. And then the last one, I'm proud to be a student at PR. Saw a little dip coming out of COVID. We all felt a little dip coming out of COVID, right? So, we're getting to the point now where students, again, engaged and finding their place and excited about coming in and proud about the place that they go to school. Again, if you saw the fall play, you see the growth and achievement there and the things that are happening with the students. If you came to the band concert the other night and you see from 5th grade through the high school the things that are happening for our students, that's growth and achievement on display that evening. It's exciting to see and glad that the kids are proud. But again, we still have work to do there.
Can I ask a quick question? Do we preserve any of this data over time? I'm just saying because it might be interesting to see how things change and how students are feeling about school, for example, the seniors, and where those dips might be occurring where they're maybe not as happy or happier than other students.
We do preserve it. It's on our website, and when we report it annually, we have all the historic data there.
In disaggregated form too, so then we take a look at even by like gender and whatever it may be. We try to look and see like how are the kids feeling on everything.
Yeah. I just have a question. I know we've talked about this before, and I know it's a hard thing to get information from our kids that have already graduated, like what their experiences have been when they've gone to college or the workforce or the military. Like, did they feel prepared? I know, I know we've talked about that in the past, like to get some information so we, see how kids feel, 2 years out, 5 years out, or something.
Yeah, you got it. I see. We get information from past graduates, but not in what I would say is a quantitative, systematic way. The feedback we get from past graduates today and from just all of the connections back with families after kids leave is that academically, they're extremely well prepared. Mm-hmm. So when they move on post-high school, the academic part of the transition is not the challenge. The challenge is sort of the independent skills, the socialization, the being in a different environment. So that's where they feel the change more. But academically, the feedback that comes back by and large is, I'm sitting next to people in this class, that class, and the other class, and they can't believe, I can't believe we've already done, we're there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the general approach to the report, just to kind of give you the lay of the land as you're looking through this, and I'm going to hit these 3 slides, and then we're going to kind of open it up. So if there are more comments that our team wants to make around how they leverage these systems, and then if the board has any questions, we'll kind of wrap up from there. So in general, when we get the data, once we have all of it, including the benchmarking data, we're able to look and see where we fall. So the actual raw data is step 1. Rising out of that, we look for those strengths and opportunities. We try to get those in a priority order to know what the highest leverage next points would be, and those become the opportunities that we have included in red within the report to say this is where we need to go. And from there, we're actually taking those to say what the next steps should be, and we're having teams look at them. So for instance, that would be the kind of thing that goes back to a PLC, back to a data summit, where teams are then looking at it and deciding what are the next actions based on what we have. So you'll see that in the report, it is set up that way with the focus and clarity, and the eventual idea is that when our teams go to create the lessons that have to do with those eligible content, they're going to call out in red in their lesson plan, this is the area that we know we're working on, and we're doing these things systematically together as a team because we've talked about it within our PLC and we're approaching it in this way, and then being able to stand back and look at the results of those assessments that they take in progress, and then also the lag data that we get after this year's assessments. We'll be able to see, did that make a difference, right? Did the kids master that? Because obviously the learning is the goal, and having the kids be able to get the feedback to master that in the moment. And so what we're really talking about here is how we take our process, our little loopy arrow, continuous improvement. That is our culture. We embrace it. I think you can hear that in the voices of the folks behind us, and it is not unique to just this room. It is our district approach and our culture here. So with consistency and the clarity, we have to have that, as we gave the third grade example, 3 different geographic buildings. If they're not lockstep in terms of what that consistent approach is, it is almost impossible for us to say, here's the result we got, now what can we do to try to fix that, right? So we need to know what it is that we did together so that we can come back and tweak any part of that approach to make it better. So that is the how we get our results. The results themselves, we look at them, as you saw, both in individual levels, trends over time, looking at the comparisons for context, so whether it's the state, the top decile, et cetera, we look at achievement, we look at growth, and we're taking those things and layering them together to be able to make the tweaks. So the integration comes from us using the knowledge of the process we had in place, the results we attained. Now, how are we going to put that together to make adjustments to make sure that we can get better results in the future, because we are always trying to do that. We're striving.
Just to add, again, we heard naturally multiple examples of how the master schedule gets adjusted in small ways to provide time or opportunity or courses. So there are so many little things that come together to try to take advantage of what we're learning and then give opportunity to improve.
And this is such a part of our culture that we've actually included it within our PR Academy. So whenever we have new hires, that's not just folks who are new to education. That's anyone new to Pine-Richland. So they could have a master's degree and 10 plus years of experience somewhere else. When they come to us, we're talking about these approaches, our belief in continuous improvement, and the ways in which our teams are working together with their curricular approach, the consistency, and in the ways that we're instructing. Pacing as a general guide, not as it's Tuesday, whatever, you have to be on this page. It's not like that. But ensuring that we're working within the same frame and that we're assessing in similar time frames, meeting and talking about that. Vulnerability in the team, making sure that they're willing to come together and talk about the approach that they use, the results that they got. That has increased infinitely. I can't describe the health of our teams as so much better. I believe that pieces of us coming together, even through trying to figure out how to instruct online or use new tools, and it helped break down some of those barriers, and folks are really working together across districts, grade levels, et cetera. If we don't get the horizontal consistency, so within one grade level, if we don't have that figured out, we will never be able to work towards that vertical articulation. So our goal is horizontally consistent so that we can then be looking at the entire system vertically to produce those results that we want. And so that goes into the next step. So once we have those opportunity areas, we're really using just that lag data, but we've said again many times tonight, the new data, because now we're looking at another set of eligible content that takes those standards to the next level, quite literally, as kids go on to the next grade level. And so the data is informing both the teacher who's receiving those kids and the teacher who just pass those kids on, right, and for different purposes, looking at the way in which we're instructing and the experiences we have embedded within our curriculum, and then also how we will teach the group of students as they are in front of us now. So we're gathering new data. We use our professional development time. We're really looking at, and you've heard us begin with, when we were talking about the learning system, alignment time and feedback. Everybody knows that, could say it in their sleep, I believe. And we're trying to meet the needs of all of our diverse learners. So you hear about the things that Dr. Paxan and Kazilla have shared. I look to our school psychologists seated behind them as well, and the ways in which they're helping lead taking a look at the student data, determining where interventions are successful and where they're not. You know, we're looking at that and trying to figure out where we've built better tier 1 systems. We may need to change what we're doing in tiers 2 and 3 so that we have alignment across those as well. So especially at the primary level right now, that's something we're thinking about. And our reading specialists are being very mindful about how to leverage those tools that are being used in tier 1 so the kids aren't seeing something completely different and are able to keep applying those strategies. So basically, we make adjustments based on the assessment that we're getting throughout the year, and we're trying to meet the needs of the kids, and it's an ongoing cycle. We get to stand back on a night like tonight and look at lag measures, but that doesn't change the approach that we have. It just, you know, gives us more information to try to help drive the system forward as we improve. So that's the kind of the content of the presentation that we had for you. We're going to kind of open it up for discussion. Any comments from anybody behind me? Board members, questions or comments?
I was going to ask a question about the disaggregated data in the appendix of the report. Is there anything that stands out there to you that we should take a closer look at, have a discussion about? I'm just asking your
I think in the
opinion.
high-level summary, in the very beginning, the executive summary of the report, there is a gender differential, slight, but a gender differential in terms of ELA performance that is consistent for both PSSA and Keystone, where females are outperforming males. So that's something to be aware of. And we've also seen some gaps. Obviously, our English language learners are not performing extremely well on the English language measures or Keystone measures, but they are doing relatively well. Dr. Kiesel, if you want to comment on that.
Yeah, so last year, is this on?
This one isn't.
Go ahead, take this one.
Last year, we had the highest level of ESL learners since at least 2019 in the district. So we were really looking at that time alignment and feedback with them, ensuring, especially at the primaries, that they were getting the level of services and the pull-out that they needed. The ESL students are required to take PSSA math and science their first year. So they could have moved from outside the country and they have to take those tests. So their level of English acquisition with those vocabulary concepts is very difficult. So that's something that we keep in mind and continue to improve. They do get a pass on the reading or the ELA for 1 year, but they also take an alternative assessment similar to some of our students in special education. It's called the access test. And it's basically, what is your level of access to the English language? And it gives us a level and determines, as one data point, do they need to continue with English as a second language services, or can they exit? And looking at our students' scores in grades 1 through 8, they're composite. So looking at their reading, their speaking, their listening, they were 20 to 30 points higher than the state average. So that was in grades 1 through 8 and then 10. So we continually look at that, and then we're aligning. Last year we purchased the new resource, National Geographic. We're aligning that with the ELD standards, which are the English Language Development Standards, to help them acquire the language so that they're able to take these tests and be successful and feel good about it as well.
One other thing that I would say, it's absent in the report. We don't really speak to it. We see the quintile performance, and we see that we want our 5th quintiles to be growing. That is happening, and we are having no trouble at all identifying our gifted learners in the district. Our percentage of gifted learners is increasing, in fact, so much so that we recently hired and the board approved a 50% gifted teacher at Eaton Hall Upper Elementary School. So in the past, one of the discrepancies that we would see is the identification rate of students for gifted services was higher among males than females, and we weren't necessarily doing that universally. We are now. In 2nd grade and 5th grade, we cast that net. We're identifying students. It's very equal in terms of the representation there, and they're doing a great job. Dr. Pohl here is our gifted ALC, trying to help coordinate the K-12 programming and what that looks like, and really having our gifted teachers partner with our general education teachers so that when they're included in a class, same as what we would do for a special education student, they're really helping think what they can do to take their instruction to the next level, to make sure they're differentiating and growing students.
Is it possible, Dr. Justice, to get that data on the GATE students included in this table with the disaggregated data?
That is not something the state breaks down for us. So we give you all the disaggregated groups that are provided to us. We look at that quintile to know that our GATE students are among our highest performing. So the 4th and 5th quintile, typically, that's where we want to make sure that we're growing.
But we have a lot of other students included in that top quintile, correct?
Correct.
Depending
Yeah.
on the subject. So we may have
That's right.
some high-achieving students in math that are in the 5th quintile that are not GATE students.
That's right. That's right.
And how do you, so I noticed in some of your findings, it's targeting those GATE students that are in that 5th quintile, but yet we wouldn't capture those students that are high achieving but not in the GATE program. How do you do that in the classroom setting?
So if you remember the title of our in-depth program review, it wasn't gifted education, it was gifted and or highly achieving. So we're treating those students the same when they have a strength or a talent in any one area. We're looking at trying to grow them. So when we look at high achieving students, we're talking 4th and 5th quintile here, we want them all to be growing. So the gifted teachers can act as a consult on any of that. And we know who the students are by the way that their data is coming through, even for the classroom-based assessments.
Yeah,
And I
we're
would
trying to
just even say too, through our, sorry, Mike.
No, it's okay.
Through our MTSS process, we'll look at like, how can we provide that student enrichment? Again, we are looking at data as teams, and how do we provide those students that enrichment or even acceleration, highly achieving as well as gifted?
Yeah, and back to the classroom, I'd say what we're really seeing more and more of our GATE teachers, where in the past maybe students go to GATE for an experience, now it's more of that integration in the classroom. So our teachers, GATE teachers, pushing in to support our GATE students and high achieving students in the classroom, that's happening more than it had in the past as well. So we continue to encourage that collaboration between gifted education teachers and general education teachers.
As one example of that, we have Sam's going to comment too real quick.
So I'm a 3rd grade teacher at Hanson. Something that our principal, Mrs. Guerin, had showed us is that there's a bubble chart within our STAR data that it can like identify each student if they're like low achievement, high growth, or high achievement, low growth, so that if I see a child that's high achievement but low growth, I know, okay, they need some more enrichment because they're already achieving high, but they need a little bit more push, a little bit more enrichment. So I can deliver that during RAM time or just extension of lessons and things like that. So,
Sitting here for 12 years as we've done this, the word that keeps coming back to my mind is integration. There are so many pieces of what we do academically that have been refined and improved over time. We heard reference to almost every IDPR report in some way tonight as we're talking about these tested areas. I mean, in almost every case, the robust nature of IDPR has allowed our district in each of these departments to see ahead to what's coming, understand where those trends are, look at our own programs, and make recommendations for how they're going to improve. It is very rare that a surprise happens here that we have not been able to sort of see ahead through the IDPR process. That's awesome. So did we know Steeles was going to come into Pennsylvania? We didn't know Steeles was going to come into Pennsylvania. But what we heard tonight is we saw next-gen science standards. We were already there with resources. We were ahead of the game with the systems in place. Did we know everyone was going to have to test on technology? No. But we were headed in that direction. We were a little bit ahead of the curve. It is a learning process. So again, it just makes me proud because it is not easy to do the hard work. Like a teacher who's in a 3rd grade classroom teaching multiple subject areas, managing Tier 1 instruction, supporting interventions, doing all the other things, maybe as a chair, participates on an IDPR, is trying to, and kids have a runny nose, they scrape their knee, they need help finding their lunch bag. There's like a million things that happen in schools, and the effort and skill of our team is just awesome. And it does not happen overnight. These are years and years and years of hard work.
You're going to ask a question? Go ahead. Okay. All right, I just had a couple questions. Dr. Hernandez, you were talking about in the English department that they now have a common planning period. So is that something that happens across the core curriculum classes, or how does that, tell me a little bit more about how you do that?
Sure. So the team has demonstrated an excellent desire and ability to work together. It is common at a middle school that teachers have a
Right.
team planning period. At the high school, that doesn't usually happen in very many places. But based on the team's willingness and desire to work together, we thought it would be helpful if we built that into the master schedule. So this is the first year, at least in the period of time that I've been here, that we've been able to build that in for that team.
Okay.
We try to find some common time for our other tested areas. It's not always possible across a high school master schedule as large as ours.
Right.
But that's something we will provide them that extra time to support their students.
Yeah, I mean.
But again, just to use an example, middle school has common planning time
Their
for
team.
the team.
Right.
But not necessarily the content area.
Right, no, I
Right?
thought that was,
So, yeah.
that was brilliant. That was really a great addition that you could accomplish that for the English. So I'm not sure if, I know you probably have a goal of maybe trying to do that for the other departments, but
Yeah,
that was
it's-
just
he
my
can't,
question.
what he's
I
saying
know,
is he
it's like
cannot
impossible.
overpromise because you
Right.
just can't make it all happen. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the benefit is we have so many different choices.
Yeah, so Mike was just adding back there that this year we have all three of the tested areas have that common plan time together.
That's great.
Excellent addition, Mr. Barlack.
Yeah.
Hey, Ms. K just added another point.
Co-teachers.
Again, we've emphasized this a few times, the special education teachers have that
Yeah.
common planning time as well.
So if they're co-teaching, they have a common plan.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's great. Okay, I had another question. Totally different. You were talking about the AP test and about, I think it was, the number was like 1046 of students that took the test. So can you describe the makeup of that test or that number? Is that some of the same kids taking multiple AP tests? You
Yeah,
see what I'm asking?
1046 is the number of tests taken.
Yeah.
500 are the number of students that took at least one.
Okay. So, and is that for 10th, 11th grade, or is it only juniors and seniors?
Yeah, so that was for, the data that you saw up there was for all the students in the high school. Students can start taking an AP class as early as 10th grade in
Yeah.
the high school, but that was for 10th and 12th last year.
The gold measure is specific to the graduating class of 2024.
Right.
Okay.
Right. No, that's great. Yeah, it was just one clarification. Okay, one more question. So the survey results that you had that we had in all of the graphs, it seemed like 2020 was sort of a peak year as far as the question about how satisfied they were. So Michael, I was just curious, when was that survey given? Because at the end of 2020, that was sort of a, that wasn't the highlight
Yeah,
of anybody's
students were-
year. Yeah.
They were at home at that time.
And they
so
took
that
it
was
at home.
COVID closure time.
That's
But again,
amazing.
we're super proud of what we
Yeah.
were able to accomplish in basically overnight switching to an online learning environment. Again, credit to our staff to be able to do that and support our kids at home. So that was a quick turnaround. And I think there was a real sense of pride because I'm sure kids were seeing other students in different school districts where they were. Some didn't connect for months, and ours was, over a long weekend. So I think that had a lot to do with it.
Yeah, well, that's highly notable to me, at least in looking at those. So another high five to you guys on all that. Yeah. Okay.
I don't have any questions. More of a comment. Just really thankful for all your time and effort. I know that these are snapshots, but this is something you live every day. Also, that I have full confidence that the opportunities that we have for growth, that you guys will meet the moment, and that you will kind of come to us, and hopefully we can work together to get you the support you need to continue this great work that is on display. So I just want to say thank you for all the effort inside, outside the classroom, and for showing up tonight. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to echo Ashley's comments there, Ms. Fortier's comments, that thank you for the hard work and dedication that is reflected in these results this evening. It is, it's a pleasure to sit here and listen to this. So thank you for those efforts and the dedication, and it is appreciated. Thank you.
A question on, when you look at your findings, and so I appreciate you putting it in red because, that's good to be able to see and read it. And then you go through your next steps. When you do the next steps, you're talking about all the school, they all coordinate and all get together and go through and to do that. So that's what I want to make sure, because I thought that's what you were saying before.
Yes, so for instance, like if it was a third grade example, then I would have been working with Mrs. Gear and the principals, and the third grade ALCs and their team would be looking in the PLC. So that is what is written here, things that they've looked at. Same with
Yeah.
fourth, and then the whole way up. It's the team's really determining what that is, but then they're going to give it new life as they're getting new data. They're going to be working from this, but also it's going to grow, right?
Okay.
Yeah, so we might have 15 third grade ELA teachers in the district, and we have how many ninth grade English teachers? 4? Yeah. So again, even just the challenge of the collaboration differs depending on the level that we're talking
Yeah.
about.
Okay.
And next steps don't wait until this report. Next steps happen as soon as the data starts coming in. We're just adding it to the
Yeah.
report for your awareness.
Some of the next steps are going to involve a high level of collaboration with you as well. If you look at some of our high school ACT and SAT results, there are some curriculum opportunities that I predict that we're going to have to talk about in the coming years, and we look forward to bringing some of those to you as well.
Thank you, everyone. Oh, Mark, do you have?
No.
Next step. So, Mrs. Williams.
We don't have anybody signed up online, and I don't believe any, is there anybody in the audience who wanted to speak? I didn't see. That's what I thought. Just wanted to make sure I didn't miss somebody that came in, so we do not have any.
Well, on that note, we're going to call it a night, and thank you all for being here.
Good stuff.